unloving through Jesus' death. Because of Jesus, no one dies forgotten. Even in the midst of a pandemic. One of St. John Paul II's greatest spiritual insights was the exhortation to revive and preserve the memory of the martyrs of the 20th century, one of the most violent centuries in the history of the world. Certainly, remembering in the sight of God the many witnesses of faith, we're led to remember too the countless victims, men and women of every race, every time and condition, who lost their lives in dramatic circumstances, on land and at sea, at war and at peace. Many died far from any human comfort, victims of senseless violence or irrepressible catastrophes, abandoned and lonely. An immense cry of pain seems to rise in silence from the dust of every corner of the world for those who have ears to hear it, as we think of millions, even thousands of millions of people who have been forgotten. The cry of created beings who feel themselves plunging into an abyss of emptiness and oblivion. For them, and with them, we too want to raise up a cry for mercy. The images of rows of coffins lined up in the churches of Lombardy, of mass graves near New York, the thought of so many people, especially the elderly, who died in the early months of coronavirus, in the isolation and solitude improperly forced upon those in care, so that thousands upon thousands and millions gave up their life out of deepest depressions, believing all who they loved had given up on them due to their health and memory issues. They could not recognize their loved ones that were there, masked, nor could they recall any phone calls from them. These estimated 15.75 million deaths. In the US, 5. In the UK, 5. In all of Western Europe, 5.75 million. Are heartbreaking and overwhelming to consider. In this bloody age of more forms of technology, allowing people instantaneous communication, why was no communication method made universally available to the nursing and care homes for people to call and be seen by their despairing loved one, so to end that despair? Was it more because they were older, so why waste your time? They won't remember tomorrow anyway. Or because they were poor? And no one really cares about the poor, don't you know? This has touched us greatly. And these millions of unnecessary deaths hurts our heart. And these millions are not counted as COVID deaths, but as ancillary deaths. Not only because of the natural grief of relatives who are not able to experience the loss of their loved ones with human and Christian consolation, but even more so for the departed themselves, for those who have died and are dying alone. All of this helps us understand once more how precious, how vital closeness and sincere affection are in times of weakness, illness, debility, and old age. But it has also made us reflect on that fact that every death, including our own, always carries in itself a dimension of solitude. For at the end of our lives, the comfort and closeness of others becomes powerless, and no one can avoid that final journey. How can we prepare ourselves for that moment, which is the common lot of each of us, a moment that will come prematurely for victims of the coronavirus, but also, nonetheless, before them as it is before all of us? How can we escape the anguish of falling into nothingness? Every time we come to the table of Christ, we have the grace of reliving the death of Christ. Certainly, we can relive it every day by uniting ourselves sacramentally or spiritually with Jesus in Holy Communion. Good Friday and Holy Saturday with them carry a special grace. The death of Jesus was very real and very cruel, bringing with it the experience of being abandoned by men, but also, in a mysterious way, of being abandoned by God Himself, as we see from Psalm 42, sung by Jesus from the cross. My God, why have you abandoned me? It was a death so true that it was followed by the body remaining a corpse in the tomb throughout the Sabbath day. In the Creed we say, He was crucified, died, and was buried. He descended into hell. Jesus' descent into hell shows that He became close to and a brother to all those who descend into the abyss of death. He does not forget any of them. For Jesus, no one who dies, no matter where or when, not even in the midst of a pandemic, is forgotten. Jesus truly died just as they died, and He died with them. After Jesus' death, descent into hell, and resurrection, death is not what it was before. O death, where is thy sting? St. Paul exclaims. Death can now be lived with Jesus, who reveals a love of God stronger than death. And this goes beyond solitude. Death, even the most unknown and forgotten, can become an entrustment of one's own spirit into the hands of the Father. Jesus' words to Nicodemus invited everyone to look to the crucified one. He is the central point of faith and of the Christian life. Those who have seen them will never forget the images of St. John Paul II embracing the cross in his chapel a few days before his death. While at the Colosseum, the people were united with him in prayer as they journeyed along the way of the cross on Good Friday with him. There is no other way to prepare ourselves to live death than to look with all our soul at the crucified one, who dies with us and for us, and with our whole heart to remain in his embrace. And so, death lived with Jesus can lose its frightful aspect and allow us to perceive a mystery of love and mercy. Perhaps then we will no longer feel the urge to reject the thought of death and to erase it from our daily life. On the contrary, with faith and with the passing of time, we may become so familiar with it that death can become our sister, to use the expression of St. Francis. Whether through the coronavirus or in some other way, death comes to us, regardless of where we are, including regardless of living a religious or a secular life. But we should not forget that, thanks to Jesus, death does not have the final word. And every death, even the most forgotten in solitary, means falling not into nothingness, but into the hands of the Father and his continuing, unconditional love for eternity. Now go and pray for all you have lost this year, all you have lost through COVID. Pray to them. Talk to them tonight and think closely of them. Tell them how much you love them. Tell them what it's been like being without them. And then send them that message through your heart. They will hear you, because a heart message is always heard. Peace be with each of you.